All right, we're going to look at the book of Micah. This is a prophetic work that is written with very clear notice to both ancient Israel and to the modern church. Micah's name means, just like mine, who is like the Lord? A question that becomes profound theme throughout the book of Micah as the prophet is revealing God's unmatched justice, his compassion, his sovereignty. Michael prophesied during the reigns of Jotham, Ahaz, Hezekiah, all kings of Judah, roughly from 740 to 686 BC. That places him as a contemporary of Isaiah in the south and Hosea in the north. Micah, sorry, not Michael. Micah ministered primarily to Judah, but his message also speaks to judgment over Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom. This was a time of social injustice, of political corruption, of empty religiosity, conditions ripe for God's intervention and correction. And as you've already seen, most of the minor prophets spoke, well, even the major prophets spoke in times very similar to this. One fact about Micah you might not be aware of is Micah was from Morsheth, a small village in the Shephelah region, far from the political elites in Jerusalem. His rural background gave him a very unique sensitivity to the plight of the poor and the marginalized, and that comes out strongly in his prophetic words. Um, the book of Micah is organized in three cycles of judgment and hope. Each section begins with a call to hear or to listen, the prophetic summons to attention. That is fascinating in that the literary symmetry is there. Judgment is always followed by a glimpse of hope. God is never merely punitive. His discipline is always to restore order. So the structure looks something like this. Chapters 1 and 2, judgment on Samaria and Judah, but it ends with the promise of restoration. Chapter 3 through 5 is condemnation of corrupt leaders, but that culminates in vision of a coming king and peace for all nations. And then chapter 6 and 7, which is effectively a divine lawsuit against the people, followed by God's unmatched mercy and final doxology. That back and forth between judgment and mercy reflects God's covenantal nature. He's righteous and he must address sin, but he's also faithful and committed to redemption. So the major themes of this book are justice, covenant, and the coming king. One of the most well-known verses in Micah, perhaps maybe even the entire Old Testament, is Micah 6:8. He has shown you, O man, what is good, to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. This verse captures the ethical core of Hebrew scriptures. True religion is not ritual, but it's relational. It's lived out in justice, mercy, and humility. Micah's rebukes are not vague. He condemns land grabbers who exploit the weak, leaders who devour the people like cannibals, and prophets who preach for profit. These images are vivid, even disturbing at times, and they're meant to wake up the consciousness of a nation. Alongside that criticism comes this covenant of hope. In chapter 4, for example, Micah envisions a day when the nations will stream to Zion, swords will be turned to plowshares, and God will reign in peace. That's not a political utopia, that's eschatological hope rooted in the character of God. Micah continues to list one of the clearest messianic prophecies in the Old Testament, Micah 5:2, which declares that a ruler will come from Bethlehem, whose origins are from old, from the Ancient of Days. This prophecy is cited directly in Matthew 2 during the birth narrative of Jesus. And it's a fascinating note that Bethlehem Ephrata was seemingly an insignificant town, but out of it would come a ruler of eternal nature. God delights in using what is small to bring about big things. The prophecy contrasts the corrupt rulers of Micah's day with the coming ideal king who will shepherd his people in strength and not oppress them. It anticipates a ruler who will bring peace, not just through politics, but through redemption. Historically, Micah had a direct influence on later reform. In Jeremiah 26:18, Over a century after Micah's ministry, his prophecy of Jerusalem's destruction was remembered, and it was remembered as having sparked national repentance during Hezekiah's reign. That's remarkable. It shows that the prophetic word can outlive the prophet, bearing fruit in generations to come. Also, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of Assyrian incursions and deportations during this time, confirming the military threats Micah warned about. His prophetic warnings weren't abstract, they aligned with real historical events, like the fall of Samaria in 722 BC and the siege of Jerusalem by Sennacherib in 701 BC. Another detail that's often overlooked is that Micah ends his book not with doom, but with a song of praise. He uses his own name, who is like God, as a play on words in Micah 7:18. Who is a God like you, parad- pardoning iniquity? It's a fitting conclusion to a book that confronts sin, but ultimately magnifies grace. Theologically, Micah challenges us to rethink power, worship, and the heart of God that he teaches. He teaches this: justice matters to God. Systemic justice is not just a social issue, it's a theological one. Ritual without righteousness is empty. God is not impressed by sacrifices if hearts are far from him. And hope is grounded in God's character, not human reform. Micah says God delights in steadfast love in chapter 7, verse 18. He doesn't just tolerate uh, uh, mercy, he rejoices in it. Micah also reminds us that judgment and mercy are not opposites, they are twin expressions of God's faithfulness to his covenant. He judges to cleanse, not to condemn. He disciplines to restore, not to destroy. So, as we step back and reflect on what this book has to say to us, we're left with a question that's both ancient and urgent. Who is like our God? A God who hates injustice, who calls people to walk humbly, and who promises a coming king, not just for Israel, but for the entire world.